Just a gorgeous afternoon. A china blue sky and a temperature that's just so agreeable. There's no humidity at all. And then here's the Eastern Passage, which we'll see a little better in a second. Here's the view. It's quite gorgeous. Just sailed through there, boated through there. Now I'm going to sign off. Here's the farmhouse front door. And we'll go in. Here's the dog. There's Sunny. Just give you a little view of the rooms. My doggies. Here's Orly. Here's the kitchen. Where the cooking gets done. And fireplace. Not much has changed over the years. Let's see. Get a good sense of the scope of the place. There's a refrigerator, and here's a lovely view from the kitchen window. You can see what we see every morning and every evening. We do the cooking. I wash a lot of dishes here. This is one of my favorite views with the bottles. And I'll sign off.
Because in Blue Hill, the bitterness that we hear is the people who used to be along the harbor found they could sell their place and give so much money to summer people that they sold and bought a farmhouse 3 or 4 miles inland. Yeah. And then they have to drive every day. Right. They don't have any place for their traps.
Yeah, well, that's the trend.
Stonington really is very picturesque. They're packed right in there.
Well, next year when we have two weeks.
2 weeks and a trip to Stonington.
Does Normie usually do it on weekends? Is that?
I don't know. We want to go over to Stonington with Normie.
Maybe we could do it Saturday night.
Was it like?
He's going Friday night.
He takes the group over for dinner.
Oh, that's right.
We saw him going over to Frenchboro this afternoon.
He looked very serious.
With the
Did
whole
he
group?
even? He
the
waved.
whole
He didn't even
lot.
acknowledge that he knew who it was.
And that's his second
He was
income,
cool.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. And I
He
imagine
looked
that
like-
they'd be pretty
He was
good.
on. He was.
Well,
on
now
business.
he told us, I thought he told us that he took them over there to Stonington and they bought dinner for them.
That they bought dinner for him.
Yeah, and Nancy.
Yeah.
That was his pay. He indicated,
Really?
he indicated
really?
that was his pay.
Oh,
He
I
must have had a
think.
fair amount of fuel, too.
I've heard other different.
Oh,
Maybe it depends
Yeah.
on who it is.
It
He
might be.
might take people that he
That's
doesn't
the tip.
necessarily want to dine with.
Yeah.
And he had quite a few people in the boat. 12, something like
I
that.
would say, anyway.
well, it's a good idea. And
I
why
think it's
not
a
make a
great
little
idea.
extra
It's
money?
very enterprising of him.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's
And I'm sure
entertaining
he
for
has
everybody.
a blast. Do you think he talks the whole way
Oh,
over?
yes. He loves it.
You can't hear much in the,
It's an
with
audience.
the motor going.
At the head of the table
It doesn't matter.
He said
Give him
that
an
he
audience.
and Nancy just live for the summer season.
Yeah.
It's so boring in the winter.
I guess they didn't spend much time here this winter.
Really?
Nancy said they were on the mainland most all winter, visiting people.
Oh, just visiting. Huh.
And then she went to Oregon.
They weren't working. They weren't pulling traps.
I don't know, they'd probably go for a few days. She just didn't go into it too
Well,
much.
they may not go full as many days.
Said they didn't spend too much time on the island.
But the funniest thing was last year, I called Normie for something and didn't get an answer. And I called him the next week and I still didn't get an answer. And I got worried about his health.
Right.
And I called Sonny Sprague and I said, I'm worried about Normie. He said, don't worry about Normie. The guy that he buys bait for took him and Nancy down to Florida. And then when we got here last year, we asked him about the trip. Oh, it's wonderful. He said, all of the expenses were paid except I bought the food. And I paid $1,300 for the week we were here for the food. Imagine what they ate.
For 4.
For 4.
I think they went out to eat.
They went out for
The
restaurants
fanciest restaurants
a
all the
lot of
time.
the time, but I'm sure that they bought a lot and they just ate big.
You're right. Well, he would eat big. Well, it was kind of interesting. On Mother's Day, Normie, out of the blue, called up and said, "We're going to the North Blue Hill Range for Sunday dinner. Why don't you join us?"
Oh, nice.
Nice.
So we did. I've never been to the North Blue Hill Grange. And we were late getting there because we were coming from church and the coffee hour was extended. And anyway, we finally got there. They'd saved places for us. Well, the place was packed. Turkey dinner. There was so much noise, we couldn't even talk. Could you talk at all? And Normie was there with his mother, and I don't think he even introduced us to his mother, and I frankly don't remember what his mother looked like. Do you?
No.
I see her when
So
she
that
comes out of her house. I know that's
So I didn't know, and then he had, I think his uncle and his wife or somebody else. We weren't introduced at all, so I had no idea who was who. And the only one I could hear, I think I was sitting next to Normie. We did exchange a few words. Then the thing was over, and we left, and that was it.
What a Mother's Day.
Yeah, that's something.
Well, we've had them here for supper.
We had them once. Was it once or twice?
Once. And that
Down
was
at
actually
the
a lot of fun.
cottage. And Normie was the MC.
He was.
Yeah.
And he got dressed up. I mean, it was
Did
very,
he?
well, his
Wow.
hair was combed
Wow.
and,
Yeah.
you know, a shirt. And
That was fun. He was
it
the
was
MC.
really fun.
Yeah.
What did you serve?
have
I
to-
think we had a
don't remember.
chicken.
Uh-huh.
Chicken, I actually do
Oh,
remember.
yes,
We
and the
had
roasted
chicken
vegetables. Was
and
that
roast
the...
vegetables and zucchini and a rice.
Wow.
You probably had a blast.
That's really actually.
No, we all had a good time.
Oh, it was really fun, and they really enjoyed coming.
We'd have a
We
lot
should
to
do
talk
that
I've
more
never,
often.
I've never invited them for dinner. I never had anything to offer.
I would have just
Lobster.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody even likes lobster.
Yeah.
They eat lobster. What? They eat lobster stew.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
could
can
invite them for
imagine.
dinner, and what could you bring? You
That's
could bring
hardly
your
the
lobster
You bring the,
bisque.
you bring the lobster. Yeah, right. We'll have
That's a
dinner.
good idea.
DYO.
I can't imagine.
All right.
Well, the oven,
lobster.
the oven in the cabin does.
Doesn't
There's
work.
Oh, sorry.
You may have had more brothers and sisters than you know.
Oh dear.
People sort of had a different sense of that.
Yeah.
Different sense of it. I remember my mother said that she used to go when she was 14 with her brother overnight, and they would just go out in the boat, and nobody thought anything of it.
Well, you went off when you were 15 for a week, Faz. You told me. Was a friend.
That's where what people did.
Where'd you
It
go?
was like the old days.
Where'd you
Was
Well,
was
my
the old
family
days.
built a boat in 1938, and we kept it in Paden Aaron. And I used to go off with 2 other friends, and we'd go off for a week.
Imagine
At the age of
at
15.
age 15.
And people say, "You sail through Woods Hole without an engine?" I mean, you've done it how many 100,000 times?
No, my father was very deaf. I remember once coming on a cruise back from Harbour Island. Mind you, no GPS. You go through all these islands with just a compass, and the only electronics was a C battery to light up the compass at night. All this stuff in the fog. But then he'd go around Cape Cod often. And that's kind of exciting. That Monomoy, and there's a place called Butler's Hole. And you hear the water breaking off there's a passageway, and we hear the water breaking on the sandbars out there. But we sailed in once all the way up, the whole length of Nantucket Sound, in a howling northeast gale. And then we got to Woods Hole, it was in the middle of the night.
I was with you on that trip.
You
were with me?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And of course we went half the buoys, and I mean, in Woods Hole you've got to be just pie-eyed,
Yeah.
drunk,
To do a good job.
to,
To dare it.
to have any trouble. And I mean, it's all lit up like Broadway. But anyhow, we went through there in the middle of the night, and then as you approach Nashan, there are two little wooden buoys, and then two rocky ledges, and no spotlights or anything like that. And he'd sit at the helm, and others would be up all around looking out and saying, "None to starboard," and he didn't have his hearing aid. What? None to starboard. Even I got a little bit nervous. And how he got through, I mean, I've done this at nighttime in a motorboat where I can stop and listen and think. But you're just going with this damn boat. There's no stopping, no engine.
It was going fast.
Fast.
What?
Yes, what? Then he came into the harbor, and this was Labor Day
Too.
weekend.
That's the most amazing thing.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend. The harbor was absolutely full. He couldn't get to his mooring. So he rounded up into the wind and dropped an anchor. And the mud is kind of soft there. And we dragged. He dropped another anchor. Our two anchors went right across somebody else's two anchors. And then the two hulls came together.
Oh, God.
And of course they had everything we could put in between. But that was a kind of a thump. And they all came out like hornets. And we woke the whole place up. Uncle of mine, way up in the stone house, heard all the shouting. He came out to see what was going on. Everybody's shouting because Alex couldn't hear anything.
So you remember that?
I do
But
indeed.
then unshackle ankle chains and drove it around, and two ankle.
Oh, what a mess.
You imagine 4 anchors doing that
How old were you then?
underwater.
Oh, they're about the same age.
Oh,
Prez, how old were you then?
I don't remember what year it was. I remember the Black Duck was here in Harbor Island, and there were a whole bunch of people. Natty Goodhue, Bobby Cutler, Albie Goodhue, and a big bunch of young kids. I guess they were out of college at that stage of the game. But it was a good crew.
But you were younger?
And you and I must have been, what, 12, 13?
Oh, that young.
Yeah.
Right.
Goodhues were in the movie that we saw, right? Were those the Goodhues?
Good use.
No, those were Perkinses.
Oh.
They were Johnny and Mac Perkins. But
and you weren't wearing your life jacket.
no, I wasn't. Well, I was in the movie, but I probably was in the movie, but not in that. No, I remember that we went from Harbor Island over to North Haven, and somebody had just had a wedding, and there was a big post-wedding party, and all of the younger members of the crew went ashore, and they had much too much, and came back late at night, and your father got them all out and up and at them about 7 o'clock in the morning. And we got underway right away, and that
They said, which end is the bow?
breakfast underway. There were some pretty pale faces. You know, my father was along on that trip too.
Oh,
Yeah.
memorable trip.
I have to look that up in the logs down there. I looked up the first trip that you and I came, or at least the first one I came, in 1929. And
That'd be
that's when the pictures, that's when the movies were taken that you showed at the last
Oh,
meeting.
right.
That was your first trip up here?
That was my first trip up here.
Were you in the movie? I don't know.
Yeah, I was holding my mother's hand.
Yes.
Okay.
Through most of it.
Okay.
Instead of the life preserver.
That film has, do you remember in that film that my mother and some man were on that old rickety pier on the float? He says, I looked like my mother. They were acting like teenagers, kind of wrestling.
Oh, I remember that.
And I thought, I mean, it just doesn't seem like my mother. It was such a quiet, retired person. To be wrestling with a young man on this rickety float that's only that much above the water.
Yeah.
In fact, if you've got too many people on that side, you've got your feet wet. But that means
I didn't realize it was your first trip. Wow.
Yeah, that was my first trip. I don't know whether you'd been here previous to that or not.
Well, that's an exciting movie to have then, isn't
Sure.
it? Right.
I can remember coming up when I was younger. I came up with my mother and two maids that we had. We called them maids in those days.
Well, there were two on this trip, too. We brought one,
Well-
and Flora Cody was the other.
On the
Yeah,
Black
these
Duck?
are people
Oh,
from.
no, these were
No.
on the Black Duck? They came,
No,
Oh,
no.
They get. Oh,
No, they on the trip
On the
the
trip,
movie trip.
yeah.
Right.
well, and we all went to Rockland, and then took the ferry to Northampton,
Yeah,
and then we got on the Black Duck.
yeah.
These two young women were from Dorchester, had never seen salt water even from Dorchester. So Alex said, well, here's the galley, and maybe
Good luck.
and the boat's tipping, and then, oh my God.
God, what a nightmare.
Can you imagine?
Do your thing.
Yeah, but
That was really awful.
Whatever.
And then they come up here and
Then they
in
came
the
up,
middle of nowhere.
now they put it in
Well, okay.
Could you shut her up?
but
Tiny
the
bit.
tool room
Yeah,
of this place here.
There you
That
go.
was
quite
their
a lot.
bedroom.
I'll leave it if you don't like
And,
it.
and you know what the stove was down there? It was a
Kerosene wick stove.
Where in
in the cottage.
the kerosene wick?
Kerosene wick stove.
Irving, would you like?
Now that's the
get
worst
one bug
bit
out.
of cooking utensil that you could possibly have.
That's oh,
I've never seen one like that.
Well, they're out of existence
Yourself.
now. Yeah.
so's your old
Kerosene
man.
wick stove.
Kerosene wick stove.
Have you ever heard of a kerosene wick stove? He says that
No.
was there in the cottage.
Was it a masonry unit so that it would act like an oven, like a Dutch
Just all,
oven?
all sheet metal. And the only reason I know it was that because on later trips my family came up here and we used the cottage to cook because it was a wood stove in the farmhouse and it was, at least my family thought it was easier to cook on a
More modern.
yeah,
Right.
more modern, convenient. But it used to smell and it was
Oh.
not very hot.
Oops, sorry.
And I don't know how the people did it. I've heard tell stories, Stuart Johnson, your father inviting the cruising club in here one time and serving them all broiled lobsters. And Fred Lund
Oh,
served
yes.
up about, I don't know, 20 or maybe more broiled lobsters on a wood stove. And how he did it, I don't know.
Can you imagine?
See Fred Lund.
Did he do the stuff?
Yeah, I did the
Does stuff work?
split them down
Oh.
the middle,
You ever seen
live,
kill a lobster?
like that, and put bread stuffing in and
Yeah,
stick them
right,
under the.
right.
You ever see
Wasn't
Fred
a
Lund kill a lobster?
I've never done it. I
Puts it down on its back and takes a knife and goes right in here,
yeah, right down.
and they're done.
Yeah,
I would do it.
Which is probably
Quicker than
It's almost
Better than a
quicker
boil,
It's a
maybe.
mercenary.
when you,
Right.
I don't know how much they feel, but after you put the lobsters
No
in,
one
and
really
then
wants to know.
about 4 or 5 minutes later, clang, 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 and
I know you feel awful until it's time to eat.
They feel
And you
something.
Fred Lund was a master
at cooking
of,
lobster.
yeah.
I never had the privilege of eating
Oh.
one of them.
Well, I did once.
Mm.
I remember that.
maybe it's that dinner time.
Well, I think it
This
is.
is
We
dinner
talked
Oh,
time.
this
about
is
it.
dinner.
This is dinner, so
This is dinner.
You can eat more. We're not going to limit you.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you've been invited for dinner.
Oh,
Well, it's fun talking about all these old days. I didn't realize that you'd been on that famous
Trip
night
down.
trip down
Oh,
there
yeah.
with the two boats.
with the two, with all the
Four anchors.
Yeah, the four anchors.
Um,
And your father too, you said.
and my dad was one. I told you.
Was that pretty accurate? That all that shouting
Yeah.
going through
Yeah.
Woods Hole.
Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
checking.
Absolutely.
What a great story, don't ask.
I've told the story many times. I never know whether
Yeah.
I
Exaggerate.
exaggerate as I go along.
Right.
I remember going through Pollock Rip Slough, and we had a fair tide, and we had a northeast or a northerly wind, and that boat really moved on a reach. And we were going 12, 13 knots or something like that, and more over the ground because of the fair tide. And I, foolishly, they let me take the wheel. It was pitch black.
Oh.
And Natty Goodhue was standing right beside Wisely, and he said, now head for that buoy. There's a lighted buoy. Well, I headed for it. He said, better get left of it, a little bit to the left of it, because you'll hit it other than that. I said, I'm a long way away from that.
The current.
We went by it so fast. We were going so
Butler's
fast.
Hole.
It was before Butler's Hole. Pollock Rip was north
Oh, yeah.
of Butler's Hole. And that was exciting.
I guess so. But you missed.
We missed.
Oh, dear.
What was it like up here without any trees? I've always thought there were no trees back in those
I
days.
suppose there weren't way back, the days of Sarah Smith.
Can't imagine.
But even in your video, your movie, there were no trees in this area.
Oh, no, but down here, this whole vista you have here was full of, not too high, like, see those two spruces down there in front of it? 20
Low
high,
spruce.
20-foot spruces. And the path went from, the wharf was down,
It was right there.
At the winch.
Yeah.
well, nearer the winch,
Right,
yeah,
yeah, the
near the winch. And the path came up kind of winding through these
Through the
spruces.
spruces.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
it was very lovely.
In the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's interesting.
So the
So
field
then-
wasn't like
But
this.
I don't
it wasn't
know what-
cleared.
I think this
Well,
has always been
it
sort of the
was
same.
Open. They
When
look
those
like just
pictures were
rooftop.
taken, I think there were very few trees
Yeah.
between here and the water.
Right. It looked like
Really?
just a dome
Yeah.
of an
There wasn't
island.
anything down there?
I don't think so. I think it was pretty
But
clear
they-
right
No,
down.
when is that?
Well, that was in 1929 when those pictures were taken.
The film that we had.
It's so great having that film. It was so much fun seeing the
I'll have to look at that
farmhouse with the clapboards, the weathered clapboards, and
Who do you suppose my mother was wrestling? So unlike Lottie, and they were just they were.
I remember that.
You know, on
I could investigate. That might be worth finding out.
but Irving, that year, I looked at the log just this morning, and that year, Kip and Molly Perkins were here, and Johnny and Mac, and then your family, and your, I think that Flowery and Janet and you, I don't think Kitty was here. And it wasn't that big a crowd, really. So it might have been Kip Perkins, I don't know. Other than that, I don't think it was my father.
Oh,
Is
he's too much
Kitty
of a gentleman.
Perkins Papa?
I think we tried to do this one time. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's the same one.
Catherine
Catherine
Perkins.
Yeah.
Perkins?
Well, no, that was a sister
Oh, okay.
of Molly.
All right.
And
Oh, but out here, right over there, was that big churn.
yeah.
Butter churn.
And
Yeah.
your mother,
Yeah.
Esther Moss out
Right.
there. Churning was whatever you do with those things. But right there, I remember it.
That churn is still around.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. I don't know where
It
it
used
is.
to be holding
Used to
the
be in
door
the
open.
kitchen.
But now there's a broken sledgehammer.
Yep. Updated.
These are pretty nice shingling jobs.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
did a good
it's
job.
nice.
Well, it's hard to, the whole island, of course, being farmed. That's why all the trees have been cut.
Uh-huh.
because they were farm.
It was
Yeah.
cleared for farming, right. And it was
It is
bought
hard
from
to-
Stinson,
Stinson.
Well, I don't think there's the whole lot.
who was farming.
Well, no, but this
this
area.
part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
This area, Stinson.
Mhm.
No, they must have farmed it, if you can imagine.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Well, he had sheep and a few cows,
Yeah,
and so he had
right.
pasture and I don't know what else.
The
I don't
old
know what the
pictures of
farming
Blue
was.
Hill
Oh, yeah, it's treeless.
without trees is just amazing. So different.
Not right.
You get over to
Just
Sarah
somewhere.
Smith's house, Marjorie always puts me to work pulling the grass
Yeah,
off the
that's
rocks.
filling in.
She wants,
Sarah
wants
Smith's
the rocks.
needs work.
Was she the one who was murdered?
No.
No.
But there's a ghost.
But
There's a
she was
story
the
that
first born. She was born.
Firstborn.
Yeah, she was the firstborn of Swans
and
Island.
she's the ghost?
Yep, she's the ghost.
Now,
not for
what's
being
the
murdered,
story
but for being
about the
firstborn.
I
ghost?
didn't realize there was a ghost.
Did
We
we
just
make
made
it
that up this year.
Oh, you
Oh.
I don't know.
Who's mechanically minded around here?
What do you need?
Quickly, Irving, we've got to go.
It's going to be very quick. I bought this thing.
I use the committee.
doesn't
Somebody
know,
will only
he
admit
doesn't know how to work it.
It's a wonderful propane lamp.
At the
And
top and the bottom.
the top and the bottom. And the first one.
All back? Morning.
How are you?
Good. How's your sail?
You should go. It's fabulous.
Is it? It's beautiful.
We were just going to go down and grab the.
We were moving, and now
It's great.
it's great. Yeah. Yeah, we wanted to go early. Did you guys take a walk this morning?
Yeah, we went out to Otterden Head, then
Oh, did
came
you
back.
see the audience?
No, we didn't. We were there for maybe 45 minutes. We watched and watched and watched. You were really lucky. You guys were
Well,
there.
maybe you'll see him tomorrow.
Could be. I went back to Schooner Cove and it was beautiful there. We had a